right. So welcome. We had already a couple of really nice sections, and it dig already into that topic. What I think when looking at the current state and when looking actually at the news, if you read the news of mobile marketing, most of it is really about like the privacy developments and also how to deal with it. And I'm like super excited to have Hazal here with me. Because at Deliveryhero, obviously as one of the biggest company in the world, right, is tackling that since so many years and is really in the midst of everything. So with all the expertise Hazal just like has collected in the past, we will try to dig as deep as we can to understand and give you all like really good ideas and tools you can use for your business. So Hazal, what are you doing actually at Deliveryhero?
Yes. Hello everyone, I'm Hazal. I lead the performance marketing solutions team in Deliveryhero. We own some of our MarTech stack and we are in charge of tracking, attribution, reporting, making data useful for the actual marketeers and also for the management. We also own some other third-party tools, such as the feed management tool that we use, reporting and some scripting. And we also have our dedicated analysts working with us. So we have a combined setup of channel knowledge plus the marketing analysts. So we directly work with marketing analysts day to day.
And I think Marcus was just like telling a little bit the Deliveryhero setup
Marcus.
and Foodpanda being one of the brand. So I think like also for here, just like to understand the way how you work there, Deliveryhero kind of being the headquarter here in Berlin, but all the brains are locally. So how does it work?
Yeah, I had to actually check it up before I was on the stage to see how many countries we are operating at the moment. Because it changes quarter over quarter. Currently, we are operating in more than 70 countries around the world in 4 different continents. Headquarters are here in Berlin. And for marketing, our setup is actually quite complex. Some of our campaigns for different brands are run directly from here, from the central organization, whereas some countries, for example, Turkey, run most of their marketing campaigns from Istanbul or from their own headquarters. So but for the tech stack and for the analytics stack, we serve all of the brands that we have around the world. And maybe you have heard some of our brands, Foodpanda, Foodora, Yemek Sepeti, Talabat, and most recently Glovo.
Okay, and obviously now with such a global presence and when you look at the privacy developments, you have on the one side the whole regulatory aspect, GDPR being kind of the biggest here in Europe. You have like the different states in the US who are now popping up, also thinking of a complete countrywide privacy law, plus then every country is making their own privacy development, right? And then on top of this cake, you have Apple and Google kind of mixing and mashing everything, doing their interpretation about privacy, but it's a huge trend. And obviously, I think the biggest first blowout phase was with the ATT rollout, which affected everybody. And especially if you look at the whole way how you measure things and how you define success and if things are working out or not, or how easy you are setting up and can scale this thing, that this whole shift is not working so much anymore. Led actually also to that development that the CMO tenure rate is like as low as possible. As ever, actually. So I think like right now, every 6 months, a CMO is getting kicked out because numbers look worse than they used to be, and why is that? So who to blame? So I think maybe your side of that story, like your experience going through that and how it developed, like how, what is your experience there? What did change?
Everything changed.
Yeah.
Right? But maybe if I start from the product updates that we had to do in the last 2 years, and including GDPR even before that, actually, that to order a pizza right now in our apps, you have to skip or accept a lot of consent prompts in our apps to even land on the homepage. And of course, it has a direct impact on not only reporting, but also the user experience, targeting, and everything. I think everybody in this room is familiar with it. So yeah, we had to also adapt our products with respect to regulations and also ATC in the last years. We tested different prompts, what will be their impact to the opt-in rates, what will be their impact to the, for example, to push opt-in rate. If we show too much prompt, then are we decreasing our in-house retargeting capabilities and so on. We were quite fast to adapt scan, so we also had the chance to set up scan campaigns from very beginning, and then we tested different setups also there. We also tested different conversion schemas to understand if we can gather some sort of more conversion action information in the aggregated level. So yeah, on the product side, we had a lot of changes. On the team, maybe, yeah, I can also explain a bit better. So on the team, now before all of this, we had a quite sophisticated but well-established reporting stack. Yeah. Everybody was more or less agreeing on what we are reporting, how we are reporting, and so on. Of course, we had to change everything. And we had to adjust to having much less data and still trying to drive insights. So it was a lot of learning and also education within the company about what is doable, what is not doable, how do we use the existing data, and so on. And for the MarTech side, what we did is not really onboarding new tools, but onboarding a lot of new processes, new data pipelines, new dashboards, and so on.
Yeah. Do you feel like right now with the development and the setup and the tech stack you have that you are comfortable in navigating through that phase?
Currently, I think that, or not, hopefully not only me, but also my stakeholders in the company agree that we still have a workable setup and one of the best setups in the industry, how I benchmark us, because we are also speaking to partners, other companies, other advertisers, and so on. And since we are going through the same problem, solutions that they develop are sometimes very similar to what we develop, and we learn from them in some cases, or vice versa. But of course, this is not stable. I don't think that there will be a stable setup for the foreseeable future, because as Karo mentioned, I think Scan 4.0 just before us, it is coming, and then Android Privacy Sandbox is coming. So it will be a learning curve for more years, in my opinion.
Yeah, and yeah, because I mean, obviously the complexity, again, so many markets, so many industries, so many different teams, and you're doing it centrally. So if you are able to make it, I think for everybody else here in the audience should be super simple, right? With having that maybe not such a complex setup, which I think is good and interesting. On maybe iOS specifically and ATT, yeah, when you compare 2019, world looked completely different. 2020, 2021. So, like, how were the iOS setup back then, and how did it change now over time? So, specifically, when we were talking a lot about metrics and what you look into, and as I said at the beginning, maybe in the past it was like so easy. You just set up, you get the results. Everybody interpreted them the same way, and now it's like getting more difficult to understand benchmarks and what it means. So, like, how have you tackled that?
Most of our UA is through Scan at the moment, and we do accept the fact that there is limited data in Scan, and we spend a lot of time to educate everyone.
Yeah.
And by everyone, I mean many people around the world about what is doable, what is not doable. And to combat it, we developed some in-house solutions, some modeling solutions. We are hoping that we are compensating for some of the data loss through these solutions. And what we also devote a lot of resources on is actually the incrementality measurement. I think this was also touched upon in the previous session. We are devoting a lot of resources to justify or rectify our internal methodology in different incrementality tests. For the actual campaign setup, yeah, most of it is through Scan now. We tested different conversion schemas also on Scan, and we still run some retargeting on iOS.
Yeah, and yeah, you said already like incrementality. So like also to understand here for everybody. So you use incrementality also to fine tune the attribution model, right?
Yes.
So yeah, it's exactly the point. I think that the metrics just change so much, and you don't know what the baseline is, what's happening in your business. So you every now and then run incrementality campaigns
more often than every now and then.
Right.
Hopefully.
Yes. More often means like every 2 weeks.
I mean, everybody in the room probably knows how complex it is. So of course we cannot run it every 2 weeks, but we have a dedicated team developing our own product for incrementality measurement. And also we still utilize the lift studies whenever it is possible.
Yeah.
For example, it's still possible on Google. Other than that, it is a lot of feedback from the stakeholders themselves. You know, if we are reporting something and if it doesn't really make sense to our colleagues in Latin America, of course they know their business better than we do, right? They're on the field. So we also iterate a lot based on user feedback, based on what others are doing, and speaking to the partners. We have close contact with most of the partners that we have. And we try to implement their recommendations to, for example, collect first-party data in a compliant way and so on.
And you mentioned, like I think, when coming back again to how it was pre-ATT and now, with this, I think also like kind of in between area where it's you're figuring things out. You don't have Scan V4 yet, so I think like also for everybody, Scan V4 means things are getting much better. More visibility. So they just opened up, I think, a little bit more on the step of super hardcore privacy when they rolled ATT out to a bit more, well, okay, we see people are using probabilistic and other things, fingerprinting, what everybody says, so we make it a little bit more smoother so that the usage and looking into scan data is getting a little bit better. Maybe nobody will use fingerprinting or they will ban everybody who's still using it. Like, this is like kind of the assumption, but it should in generally get better. But still, like comparing how much budget pre-ATT and how much budget you spent on iOS post-ATT.
Of course, I can't answer this.
Not real numbers, but maybe like, okay, it was 100%.
In our iOS scale, it also depends on geo, and also it also depends on market maturity, about how much of the spend goes to iOS. But in UA part, still we spent considerable amounts on iOS. We didn't shut down any channel after the ATT release, actually. Of course, we started spending much more on Apple.
Yeah.
But
wow. That worked out. Yeah.
But other than that, we still run everything, let's say, where it makes sense. But on the retargeting, of course, we sized down considerably. In some markets more than the others. Yeah, because of that, like I also looked up for us, so we have a background in retargeting, and I just like looked up in our system when we had iOS IDs and the number of IDs in January 2021 when ATT was not existent, but iOS was there, and then compared it with January 2023. So January 2021, we had like 400 billion requests with an ID. So, like here in the audience, who thinks that now the number of IDs stayed the same? Hands up. And who thinks like it decreased? And who thinks it increased? One? Okay. Like we have 1.4 trillion bit requests with an ID. Right now, and I think like so because the mind shift there is mainly because you had the pandemic in between. You had so much more eyeballs now going into like using smartphones, having iOS, and much more usage. So I think I mean obviously this only looks on the supply side. Yeah, it's different compared in what opt-in rate you get, which is also necessary in order to be able to retarget there. But still, like the number of IDs when you would just like look at the scale is still crazy out there, right? So it's more exactly the point what everybody's looking at. What's the opt-in rate? Is it 30, 40%? And how can you improve it? Because supply-wise, it's comparably easy to still retarget, at least looking from that sheer amount of scale. Just like because the usage goes away, what you see from laptop usage and things like that, to just more and more smartphone usage. And I think that's also kind of a fun fact. And it's also different geo per geo. But one thing that surprises me is even in Europe, it's not that drastic, at least in our apps. Of course, I have visibility in our apps, and it is much, much better than how it was initially announced or expected, let's say, our opt-in rates.
Yeah. And like also on that experience, like are there any other things or something specifics what you are looking into a partner to be able to provide? I mean, we talked a little bit about incrementality and the capabilities for that, but anything else which became more important?
I think both partners and advertisers has to be agile at the moment, because next thing is coming tomorrow, or it is delayed one more year. You never know. For example, Privacy Sandbox, there was a timeline, it was postponed, now there is another timeline. I don't know if they will respect it or not. Similar for Scam 4.0. So I think what we need is from a partner is agility, transparency about what they are planning, how they are planning to tackle all these privacy measures, and a clear roadmap on their side.
Okay, good. Nice, we have all of those. Cool. And just like on the iOS part, last point, maybe, what you are looking for in the future, anything missing there? We talked a lot about V4 scan and...
Yeah, obviously a proper privacy compliant ID agnostic retargeting solution or something that we can use in scale is still missing. And Android promises to have it, so maybe it will challenge also Apple to develop something around it, hopefully. And the web to app, especially for search, is currently missing. Again, 4.0 promises to solve it. Let's see.
Yeah, so there is like a promising future. So it's actually interesting, as I said. I think that Apple went this, that a lot of IDs everywhere. Obviously, you can switch them off, and then they did a hardcore privacy thing where everything dropped, and now they steadily try to get a bit more marketer-friendly. On the other hand, when we are switching now to Google Sandbox, I think for most marketers not a real topic right now, because roadmap is they said 2 years in how it's going to develop. Plus also you can't test anything. Yeah, so it's like, okay, you don't have the inventory available. Yeah, what does it mean? It's still being discussed. So how do you look at that from a Deliveryhero perspective?
It is right now more of an academic work, unfortunately, that we try to keep us up to date about what they publish on their website. We follow their roadmap and the changes. But of course, as you said, there is nothing to test. Still, it looks promising because it promises to have web to web, web to app, app to web, everything from the beginning, actually, for attribution, which would be quite interesting to see. Plus, they also promise 2 different privacy compliant retargeting methodologies, let's say. Again, could be interesting, of course, worth testing. But we need Google and all the partners to sign up for it, let's say, to be part of the development and open up testing opportunities. So we just sit and wait at the moment and read.
Yeah, and I mean, like, there, from our perspective, because we have right now, like with the Google Sandbox team, which is a completely different team from Google Ads team. I think most of you have contact to by Google Sandbox team. So the development cycle right now is really in this hardcore implementation phase when we are talking about the methodologies of API, how it works, and we have like bi-weekly calls with the teams to really discuss how it works, how utilizable it is to get things done. And it's really hard because you need not only like the DSPs, you need the SSPs, you need the publishers, because they are changing also everything. You need the attribution providers, right? So everybody needs to execute that, which is obviously kind of hard also for Google to do that. Plus you have the whole web space, yeah. So they are a bit more advanced, just with the topic of cookies, no cookies, yeah, where they are talking already since years about it. And that's the Android part is kind of okay. Well, we started 1 year ago now to communicate about it, but it will be similar. And that's, I think, like the good thing, because it's exactly like you said. In the end, you won't have this crazy bridge, what you need to do web to app and things like that, because one standard. It works everywhere globally, like you can have fine measurement, attribution works just by design. Yeah, you don't have like, oh, you have cookies on the web, you have IDs on the app, and there is like a technical barrier. So design-wise, I think it can be promising. And again, also like what Sam already said earlier, it might be an opportunity. Because also, like when looking at the data, and what everybody's about the privacy is that no data sharing in between anybody, right? So like providers are not getting any data, SDKs don't get any data. So because it's really separated, everything is on the device. So like onboarding, testing, and everything can be much more, much faster, right? So, and again, when we talk back to the competition between Apple and Google, and who is like the more privacy friendly. Obviously, Apple has the head on that just because of market reputation. But the design by Google is obviously much more sophisticated and even more privacy friendly than at Apple, because in Apple you still have IDs. Yeah, Google will remove them completely. No ID, no unique user authentication. It's all audience based. And if Apple sees that, maybe it's also changing, and hopefully we are getting to a dynamic where the future looks a bit more promising. How do you see it?
I mean, I think we should after 2 years, we should accept the fact that the user level tracking is almost dead, let's say. Yeah. But we also see that even having limited amount of data is still better than having no data. Yeah. So we are still able to derive some insights looking at the limited IDFAs that we have. And I personally do not foresee a clear cut in next year or in next 2 years or so. So there will be a mix. There will definitely be a transition period. What I do think is opportunity is still there. You know, we will run marketing. There will be people who will be hungry and who will need an app, right? Yeah. So yes, the measurement will be much more difficult, and maybe only looking at CPAs or CPIs, whichever you are looking at, won't really work. At least in the current granularity, it won't work. But for example, we are also integrating other metrics. For example, we are looking at the return on ad spend much more than we used to do, and there iOS has a certain advantage in many markets. Then how could I stop advertising, for example? So as long as there's an opportunity, we will adapt. We have been adapting in the last 2 years. We already have some learnings. Industry already has some learnings. So I think it will be hopefully less painful going forward.
Yeah, so in general, you feel with the whole developments more confident in the future, or do you feel more comfortable right now? Or would you turn the time back how it used to be?
Of course, everybody wants to have all the data in the world, right?
Not only marketers, from what I heard.
Have you ever spoken to product?
Yeah.
But if this is what we have, right? So I am still confident on what we are doing today, because we are seeing the impact every day, right? I mean, I am comfortable where we are at the moment. Of course, I was much more comfortable 3 years ago. Yeah. I have to admit it. But meanwhile, we also learned a lot of things. So there is still a way. When there's a will, there's a way to do things. So it will continue like that, I think. I'm not super afraid, or I don't think that performance marketing is already dead or anything like that.
Yeah, because, also like what's the alternative? And I think the main point is exactly like what you see with this example, how many IDs are really still floating around in programmatic. Also, it's just, because the users are still in front of it, right? That's not changing. Yeah, it's just like the targeting mechanisms. Maybe the pricing is changing. Yes. So it's also like what we saw, and I think most of you have the same experience. Like when ATT happened, the drop there, it means also supply price drop. Yeah, supply, like publishers were earning 50% less lower CPMs because nobody knew how to buy that, how to do that. So it's also like from the demand side, it's again like an opportunity, because like, okay, I get this same impression in front of a user for half the price. So somehow I might use machine learning and whatever, which is also obviously a good timing right now with all the AI developments and advancements there, which can even that out. Yeah, so it's I think it's an interesting development. I hope that not too many will die during that process. Because it's also like, also from our perspective, we have to, as I said, like implementing, doing that. It's something which doesn't like short-term add incremental revenue. Yeah, because it's not an incremental product we are selling. It's an alternative solution what we have to somehow apply on, and hopefully that will work out.
I think one of the biggest challenges for all of us in the room is we have to become much more fluent on data in general. Again, relating to the previous session also, because before all of these privacy laws, measurement or reporting was complementary for the average marketeer. You know, it wasn't really something that you have to deep dive into. Yeah, there is a model somewhere, and then this is the CPA, basically. But now everybody, willingly or unwillingly, have to learn much more, in my opinion, about what is doable, what is not doable, what we can track, what we can't, and so on and so forth. So marketeers need to become much more analytical compared to the past, but I do think it is already a nice thing. It's a growth area.
Yeah. And like last 1.5 minutes, so what would you give as a tip to the audience, like what they should do in terms of privacy, something like no-hanging fruits, or what do you think has the most impact?
I hope that everybody is already testing things, whatever makes sense for their own organization. I can't advise on what to test, but I would suggest that just test things, privacy-compliant campaign types, and speak to everyone, you know, speak to your partners, speak to other advertisers, because since we are in this mess together, actually people are much more open to knowledge exchanges than I initially thought. You know, I never had anyone refused me to have a coffee, or I don't have a quick call when I have questions about, how are you handling this, how are you handling that? Of course, while not disclosing the exact methodology and so on. But it helps. We are not alone in this, you know. Everybody is on the same boat.
All right. That was Hazal. Thank you, everyone, for your attention.
Great. Are we taking questions, or are you done?
Yeah, like if anybody has a burning question, now is the opportunity to get the deep
Burning question right here. He's so burning, I better hurry up before we let off the fear alerts or whatever you say.
Yeah, it's lunch ahead, so I'll be very fast. So I'm from gaming, and Google on iOS in UA is very weak for us. However, on monetization side, so we monetize with ads, AdMob is quite good. So simple question, how good Google is like for you on iOS?
Good in terms of?
Of UA. Like, do you acquire users with Google, and how good is Google for you on iOS?
We do acquire users through Google, both search and display still. It is one of the partners that is too big to give up on, in my opinion, and we are also too big to give up on in such a big channel. In terms of how good, I think we can look at different KPIs, right? We can look at CPA, we can look at ROAS, or whatever return metric you are looking at. And I cannot really give a benchmark against all the other partners, for example, against Meta, because first of all, I couldn't, but also it really depends on which country and we are speaking about. But like, we of course run Google, and do you think that many advertisers cut spend on Google? Is this why you're asking this question?
No, I'm just wondering, because like we monetize with ads, so we like demand and supply in one. On UA side, Google is very weak. Monetization, I mean, we see a lot of revenue coming from Google. So basically, someone is spending there. And I'm just wondering who is spending there.
Well, if you ask Google, I guess we spend quite a lot on them, for example. Yeah.
Anything else? Speak now or fill your mouth with food. Or both. Just be hard to understand you. All right. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.